All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Describe Gaming. I'm here with you to talk to you about cranes. And this is obviously to do with Gladius 40K. And for a long time in PvP, cranes have always been kind of laughed about, joked about. And I can explain really what has happened with cranes. With Gladius right now, because right now cranes are sort of the meta. It is the proper way to min max to win in PvP late game. So just to bring you guys up to speed on the history of cranes and Gladius, so with the way the tech tree was organized, back in the early days, cranes were expensive. Cranes took a long time to produce. Cranes cost a lot of power. The early games of Gladius to, currently, but in the early games, rushing was like the meta. You try to rush someone and win the first battle and kill their base. Now, fast forward to where we are right now with Gladius, and I'm mainly talking about ARDS mod light. That's what the majority of the veterans play, mainly on the Russian Discord. That's where you get the very advanced high level skill level players. I know some people will probably be joking that I said that, but if you think you got game and you think you're all that in a bag of chips, why don't you play against the Russians on the Russian Discord and see how well you do against them. But they'll probably say, oh, you guys play on weird settings and all that. Nah, that's just a smoke screen. But anyways, going back to the cranes. But yeah, right now, currently, with where we at with the game, we're all the way to Sisters DLC. This is 2023. Mainly the ARDS mod. That's what majority of people play on fast setting. The key thing what ARDS mod has done is made cranes less expensive, faster to produce. I don't know if some of that was actually patched in by the developers. It might have been. I'm not sure, but I'm just reference ARDS mod because that's what I play and majority of people play. So cranes are now more faster to build. I think they even pushed them down the tech tree a little bit. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they seem like they're more reasonable to tech to. And right now ARDS mod encourages high science builds, so you're teching quicker to cranes because the high science build. Think about that the meta right now is on team games, bigger maps, more wildlife. One key thing that ARDS mod does is the cities are a little bit more durable. I need to ask Ard what he did. I don't know if the cities just take less damage. I'm not sure what he gave them, but they don't get nuked as quickly, which I think is more positive than bad, because usually what would happen in a lot of games in PvP, you would position yourself and one turn kill the city, and that would be devastating. Now it's a lot harder to one turn kill a city. You can still kill a city in one turn, but you got to put some serious firepower on a city to do it. Now this does encourage more turtling, more defensive play, but there are some ways you can counterbalance someone turtling. Take all their relics, take all map control, so you get more special resource. So your economy should be better than your opponent if you're doing your build as good as your opponent. So there's ways you can penalize a turtle player. But let me go back to cranes. So in the early days, cities were easier to nuke. So when people would go cranes in the early days, they would have very tiny army, and the meta was rushing. So everybody joked and laughed about cranes. Nobody took cranes seriously. There was a player, he still plays today, Creedacros, and he's like we're talking in the early days, he's always been a firm believer of cranes. Now cranes aren't bad per se, but everything I've talked about in the early days, cities were easier to kill. It was a rush meta. People like to rush, and cranes were more expensive. They took longer to produce. So you can see why in the early days and the meta of the early days of rushing and just killing cities aggressively, cranes were not a good deal. Even though Kritochros was like the firm believer of cranes, but it's funny now because now the meta is all about cranes. If you play late game Gladius and you're not going cranes, you're going to be in a world of hurt, my friend. Trust me. Your economy cannot keep up to someone that didn't go cranes, because cranes are going to double your building production. So if you have 3 city, 4 city, and you go 4 cranes in each city, that's times 4 times, like, it's doubling up that production. So you're building more farms, more mines, more powers, more production. Like, it's all quicker. So you just can't compete. When I talk about late game, I'm talking like turn 40 and up. So 40, 50, 60. You will just slowly, like, even if you're winning battles, the production of a crane player late game will be just tremendously stronger. And more importantly, they'll be able to produce super units a lot more faster and quicker. And so eventually you'll just get overwhelmed by their super units being more abundantly out there on the battlefield. So I am kind of going and taking a deep dive talking about cranes here, because I want people to understand why I believe right now, 2023 June, cranes are the new meta, especially if you play on ARDS mod. Now, disclaimer, on 1v1s on tiny maps, I don't think cranes are as, like, as important, because tiny maps going past turn 40 into turn 50 is very rare, because it's very, you take up all the resources very quickly, and you're having these big engagements. And I wouldn't say cranes are probably the meta on 1v1s on tiny map. You can still kind of do a crane type build, but you have to be a little more conservative. But going further in these team games, these bigger maps, with the ARD mod, yes, cranes are definitely, I think, here for now. And I think every player should somehow configure their Gladius builds in PvP with cranes in mind. Now, the drawbacks of crane is you have smaller army at turn 30. It's a little bit slower per se. So yeah, your army presence is going to be quite weak. But because in team games your teammates can back you up, city defense is actually quite strong right now in ARDS mod. The maps are kind of bigger, more wildlife. So in most cases you can kind of survive a multiplayer game, unless the team that you're against all rush you and your teammates don't have anything to help you. Yes, you could probably lose, but that doesn't happen too often. I usually, and also the players at this skill level are fairly good at taking whatever they have and using it to the full potential. So they know how to, if they have a hero, they'll put it on a base hex. Now that's really hard to kill a captain on a base hex. So sieging a base is going to be a lot more harder. So yeah, I think really what it boils down to, unless you know for sure you're going to get rushed and you're like, say you're very close to a bunch of enemies, might not want, you as a player might not want to go cranes, but your other teammates could. That could be, I've done that a couple games and that generally will save your bacon. But I think in the long run of things, cranes is the way to go. So this video is all about that, and me kind of going over why I think cranes are all that in the bag of chips. Now I'm going to show you just what I'm talking about, because I know you're like, well, that's a good talk, Describe, but I don't know if I believe you. So if I go into a Gladius game. Now this, I was spectating a Gladius game and then I take my kids to the park. So, but this is a load from it that I was kind of just watching. Now, what I want to emphasize. Okay, so this is a rushing game, but let's take Dr. Jesus here, who's a fairly good player. So he's AM. As you can see, crane. So 202, it means he built an extra crane. So he's got 3 cities here, all cranes. Pay attention to, look at that ore upkeep. I mean, turn 64, but very, very good. I mean, science is off the charts, but more importantly, the dude can build Bane blades almost every turn. I mean, he's a little bit, he's not quite at the 240 range, but I mean, that's redonkulous. And the fact that he's got 5 with an edict, bringing it to 54, he's at 50, so he almost has, pretty much he's going to get a 1-turn Bane blade for a lot of turns, and then it'll go to 2, and then it'll go back to 1. But I mean, you're cracking out Bane blades every turn. If you didn't go all cranes in all cities, there's no way you could do that. Maybe you could get a couple Bane blades, but then your eco would eventually tank. I mean, just look how many he's got. These Dorm battle tanks, they're 8 upkeep. Bane blade 16, so double. But look, he's got a Bane blade, one of those, another Bane blade. I mean, his army upkeep, another Bane blade, another, like a ton of these Battleborn tanks. Like, look how many. So his upkeep, if we go, I'm just trying to emphasize how good crane economy is. But does it show me his upkeep? 181 for upkeep. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's huge, guys. I don't think I've ever had that big of an upkeep ever. But yeah, if you look at the Russians, they pretty much they understand that the meta is cranes. In fact, it's a joke now if you don't go cranes. I think like every player cranes. But again, like I said, there's some cases where maybe one player shouldn't go cranes. That's if you expect a rush or you're just in a real tight spot. You might need that early army more than enough. You can still have an okay game with cranes, and I'll just show you. Let's exit out for a sec. Go to, yeah. Now I had a game recently where I didn't go cranes. I'll show you on my. Yeah, so this was me. So I was Tyranids, but as you look on this video, I was kind of, my allies are all in the back of the map, and I'm like near the bottom. So I thought I was in a spot where I'm probably going to be attacked and maybe rushed. So I decided not to do cranes. What ended up happening was they actually attacked my allies up here that were really close. They had no units, and we kind of lost, or we lost those 2 players, but then I killed 2 other players. But my point is, if I go to the score screen, I'm just going to show you like that, like they were I had a big army too. I had a lot of air units, but I'm trying to find the score sheet when it shows on my video. It's near the end here. Yeah, I think it's, is this the turn let me fast forward a bit. Yeah, I think I GG here. Yeah, so let's see the score sheet. But my point was, I didn't do a crane build, but I wanted, so Descard Gaming is yellow. Total, I was, so the pink and purple were the Orc and Necron. And you can see they were way up there. So I actually was competing with them without cranes, but the thing is, I was kind of petering out. My no crane Tyranid sort of peters out as you get to late game without cranes, because I'm just eating a lot of grassland and forest. But economy wise, I was, keeping up with the two crane players. But again, I still think over the long run, my military was actually. So here's the thing: I was the very top in military, but I think I just had more units overall. But they had better quality units. They had Gorkanauts and Monos. So technically, I think this graph is misleading. I think they should be above me. I had a lot of flyers, and but most of mine was like lictors and flyers, and I had a couple heroes. But yeah, I don't think that is quite correct. But my point was, just because you don't go cranes doesn't mean you can't help your team. Like I feel like you can still contribute. Like this game, I called it GG because the orc player had two weird boys, and they could teleport around the map. I was trying to pin down the army that was CG my teammate, but then they teleported out, and then I had to take my kids to the park, so we GG'd. But I probably would have lost pretty badly because late game, as you go into the really late game, you just can't compete with crane economy, because the crane economy just gets better and better as the game goes on and on and on. So I think like a non-crane economy has to win before turn 60, or at least turn 50. I mean, if I had a teammate that was still in the game that went crane, probably have a chance maybe. But anyways, so that was just a quick video. I just want to compare, show you in-game stuff, and give you my thoughts on why I think cranes is the meta. Let me know what you think in comments, if you think I'm wrong. But it is kind of funny how Creedacross all these years was 100% right about cranes, and now the joke is on us apparently. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is just get you guys thinking about Gladius PvP. And if you guys are interested, if you're players outside of the Russian Discord, reach out to Ard, reach out to me, join if you're interested. Although you do need to be at a somewhat okay skill level, understand the game. Go watch my guides, go practice in skirmish. And the Russians play very early if you're an American player, so you have to get up kind of early. But yeah, they're pretty good. The only thing they require you is to understand the game a bit and be a good sport. And yeah, that's me for it. I'll see you guys on the